Hello, hello. It's time for another fantastic episode of Anarchy Among Friends Roundtable Discussion. First, let me remind you that we are covered by the BIPCOT No Government License, which allows for the use and reuse of this podcast by anyone and everyone except the governments and the bludgies thereof. We are also covered, of course, by Brandenburg v. Ohio from 1969. This Supreme Court decision ruled that inflammatory speech cannot be punished unless said inflammatory speech is designed to produce imminent lawless action or intended to produce imminent lawless action and is likely to produce such imminent lawless action. As such, because no one ever listens to us anyway, and we're just a bunch of weirdos on the internet, everything here is hypothetical and or in Minecraft. I am Andrew. I am not Jason. Unfortunately, Jason is still unavailable. We're still working on that, trying to get those technical issues figured out. But I'm on my own at the moment. Chris should be along fairly shortly, so that it is not just me ranting at you for the next 2 hours. So that would be super cool if we could get that figured out. But we're working on it. We are working on it. This is episode number 249, which I have titled They're Making Moves. And the exact reason for that will become apparent as always as you listen to the episode. So hopefully you guys enjoy listening to me for a little while until Chris can finally show up. And we can talk about some stuff. The first thing that I definitely want to talk about is actually an update to an article that we covered a while back. To recap, essentially, the local town government up by the Lac de Flambeau reservation of the Chippewa here in Wisconsin, had the local town government had failed to pay for an easement for a road that ran across the reservation. And because they had stopped paying for this, for about 10 years and had failed to set up a new lease or easement or anything else with the tribe had finally just blocked the highway that gave access to the homeowners that were not tribal members who were living at the edge of the reservation and needed that road to get access, which is well within their rights, right? Like, that's their land. They have the right to do that. That's part of the treaty that they have, everything else. On Thursday, a federal judge, so not this past Thursday, but the preceding Thursday, a federal judge ordered the U.S. government, who, remember, because of the way the treaties work, is obligated to defend the tribe in court. In this instance, they ordered the U.S. government to temporarily leave the roads open on a northern Wisconsin reservation, giving non-tribal homeowners hope that they can maintain access to their properties for a little while longer. U.S. District Judge William Conley's preliminary injunction is the latest twist in an escalating dispute between the Lac de Flambeau Band of Lake Superior Chippewa, the town of Lac de Flambeau, and scores of non-tribal property owners who rely on the roads to access their homes. To recap again, tribes granted easements in the 1960s, allowing public access to about 1.3 miles or 2 kilometers of reservation roads. The easement allowed non-tribal people to move onto the reservation, build their homes there. The easements expired about a decade ago, and the tribe and the town have been unable to negotiate new ones. According to Conley's injunction, the tribe has asked for up to $20 million for the right-of-way. Shells. Yeah. So my mic keeps muting itself, and normally the guys can yell at me and tell me that my mic is muted, but since they're not on, I didn't realize it and had to double check. So I got to really start doing that. Cause they even got a theme song for us now, and I haven't been able to play it because my mic keeps muting itself. I'm that talented, man. Hey, I'm not used to doing this on my own. All right. I'm not used to doing this on my own. I'm still getting it figured out. And I am even less professional on my own than we are professional in a group. But anyway, so the tribal council in January of 23 warned the town and the homeowners that they were now trespassing on the reservation. The tribe that month barricaded the roads, allowing the homeowners to leave only for medical appointments. The tribe opened the roads that March by charging the town for monthly access permits. Conley's injunction said the arrangement has depleted the town's entire road budget for 2024. The tribe has threatened to block the roads again if the town doesn't make a payment in October. The U.S. Department of Justice sued on the tribe's behalf in May of 23, seeking damages from the town for trespassing. More than 70 homeowners have joined the lawsuit in hopes of establishing access rights. What? White people taking native land? That's never happened before. Conley's injunction orders the U.S. government to do nothing to block the roads while the lawsuit is pending. The judge, of course, stopped short of applying the injunction to the tribe, noting it's unclear whether forcing the tribe to abide by the order would violate its sovereign immunity. Spoiler, probably would. And that's why he didn't actually straight up tell them that they had to not block the roads. All he can do is ask really, really nicely, which is what he did. Myra Longfield, spokesperson for the U.S. Attorney's Office in Madison, didn't immediately respond to an email seeking comment. Tribal spokesperson Araya Breedlove and the town's attorney, Derek Waterstreet, also did not immediately respond to emails. So that's our update, is that a federal judge now thinks that they can basically demand that the tribe leave the road open. And again, this road is only giving access to non-tribe members on the reservation who are living there. That again, they're not tribe members, and they're being allowed to live there, but they, in order to live where they do, which is on the very edge of the reservation. So if you've ever been up that way, right? If you have ever been up to Lac de Flambeau, there's a road that heads off across the road from the casino, and it kind of curves around by the lake, and that's actually the road that they're talking about. And that road, on one side is res, and on the other side is non-res. And the issue is that the road entirely sits inside reservation land. And so the reservation technically has every right to cut off the access to it at will for these people, and basically go, well, if you want access, I guess you get boats, or you have to pay us like you did originally. So, and it expired 10 years ago, but if you know anything about native tribes, which I do, that this is about the speed that they move at, right? Like, it took them 10 years to be like, hey, wait a minute, they haven't paid us, have they? We should probably do something about that, and then actually do something about that. Easily took 10 years. But now that they're doing something, now the federal government is obligated to fight for them and in favor of them, which is ironic, because then it's also a federal judge who's trying to say, well, no, you have to allow access, which is bullshit. Like, no, they shouldn't have to allow access. That's their land. That's their road. They don't have to allow you access to it. That belongs to the tribe. You had access to that strip of land by their good graces, not because you had a right to do it. And I think that is incredibly important to point out here, is that this is Lac de Flambeau's land. And there's the update. There is the first update that I wanted to cover. Well, Chris isn't here because Chris is, I guess, at a doctor appointment or whatever. So it's taken a while for him to get here. But I have a bunch of stuff to cover because I figured I was probably going to get through things fairly quickly if I'm on my own. Trying to get through some stuff. Another thing I wanted to talk about is a thing that caught my eye, and that is that JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America all lost about $5 billion with a B, $5 billion last week, trying to offload a bunch of bad debt. And this is a symptom, right? This is a symptom of the economy in which we live, and this whole build back better bullshit right here. Right, this is a symptom of this, and it's only going to get worse. So US banks are increasingly offloading billions of dollars in bad debt that they've officially given up on collecting, according to new numbers from the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, the FDIC. In its new quarterly banking profile report, the FDIC says US banks reported $21.3 billion in net charge offs in the second quarter of the year, due largely to credit card delinquencies and sour commercial real estate loans. That's the highest quarterly net charge-off rate since second quarter of 2013 and 20 basis points higher than the same period last year as customers continue to battle higher interest rates and rapid inflation. The new numbers come as JP Morgan Chase, Wells Fargo, and Bank of America individually disclosed billions of dollars in collective net charge-offs in quarter two. JP Morgan Chase says its net charge-offs reached $2.2 billion in Q2, up from $1.4 billion in Q2 of last year. Wells Fargo says its net charge-offs surged to $1.3 billion last quarter, up from $764 million YOY. And Bank of America says its net charge-offs hit $1.5 billion, which is up from $900 million the previous year. The FDIC says the total charge-off rate for U.S. banks is now higher than the pre-pandemic average. The charge-off rate for credit cards was particularly notable in Q2 at 4.82%, an increase of 13 basis points from the previous quarter. This marks the highest credit card charge-off rate since the third quarter of 2011. The data aligns with a recent report from the Philadelphia Federal Reserve, which found the number of credit card balances that are past due hit the highest level ever in quarter one of this year. Highest level ever in quarter one. Overall, the FDIC says the second quarter net income for all 4,539 FDI insured commercial banks and savings institutions hit $71.5 billion, representing still a $7.3 billion increase over the previous quarter. So simultaneously, they're making $7 billion more dollars than they did the previous quarter, but they are writing off more than they ever have. You notice a problem? Something awful suspicious there? Like Enronny, maybe? And if you remember how Enron turned out, you can probably guess about how this is going to go. But don't worry. We're building back better. Everything is getting better. Your groceries costing more and your gasoline costing you more, and literally everything that has to do with cost of living being dramatically more expensive than it has ever been. Don't worry. That is purely your imagination. It's actually that the economy is doing so much better, not worse. Don't worry. Please don't look at that man behind the curtain and pay attention to the giant green face we're projecting. That's what this is, right? And then simultaneously, you have Kamala Harris campaigning and going, it's time for a change. She's the incumbent. Like the things that we're enduring right now, all of this crap, this is her. She is part of this current administration. And yet she keeps going, well, it's time for a change. We don't need more of the same. You are more of the same. That hasn't changed. You are part of the current administration. In fact, Waltz got hammered the other day because he straight up said we can't take 4 more years of this. And everyone's like, oh, so you're campaigning for Trump now? Because 4 more years that means that you're acknowledging that Kamala Harris has done fucked up everything, right? She is part of the administration that is currently there in the White House. She is the incumbent. By saying we can't afford 4 more years, Waltz is tacitly acknowledging that he understands that it is Harris and Biden that have screwed up. So like that was hilarious. If you haven't seen that video, like you should go watch that, because this is the thing, is like he says it so earnestly because he believes the propaganda, right? He believes, like, Harris keeps going, oh, I'm change, I'm different, I'm the new thing, and just pretending and hoping that no one notices that she's the incumbent. She is the person who is currently in the White House, not Trump. Not that Trump's probably going to be any better, right? Donald take the guns first, due process second. Trump is not going to be any better. He's still just as much a tyrant as she is. But right now, like, it's just, again, it's this stupid political theater, and the left keeps acting like they can just speak black into white, right? They can just pretend that everything that you know is wrong, and well, why would you even think such a thing? We haven't been in the White House for the past 4 years. What? It's just ridiculous. Shell said, have you seen the campaign signs where all they did is cut Biden off the top of the sign because they're too lazy and cheap to get Harris Waltz signs? I haven't, but that seems pretty on brand. That seems pretty on brand for the left. That is. But on the flip side of that, don't forget that I think it was the Colorado, I want to say it was the Colorado Republican Party had to pay for campaign signs. The presidential campaign for Donald Trump refused to give them free campaign signs, so they actually had to order their campaign signs and pay for them. Oh, speaking of people having to pay for things, though. And political stuff, and Alex Jones had his media empire, if you want to call it that. InfoWars was ordered by court order to be sold off, and to help pay the over $1 billion worth of damages that he has to pay to the Sandy Hook parents for claiming that the Sandy Hook shooting never happened. Regardless of where you sit on that, that's hilarious, because what it means is that right now Elon Musk could potentially do the single most hilarious thing possible. Y'all know what I'm saying. He could buy InfoWars. And if that would not be one of the most hysterical things I had ever heard. Like, when he bought, like, when Musk bought Twitter, right? The left lost its mind. And what we've seen largely, not entirely, but because there's still definitely censorship happening, and there's still some things going on there. But what we've seen a lot of happen on X since Musk took over is we have seen a real significant change in the tone of things that are being said on there. We're starting to see, all those wonderful community notes, which themselves are community policed, rather than like fact checkers who are all like, hyper left wing, purple faux hawk Trigglypuffs. And so we're seeing that, which is great already. And we're seeing that happen. He's still got a long way to go, because there's still definitely censorship happening and things that need to be addressed on that platform. But we are seeing quite a bit change there. And of course, Trump is talking about making Musk his like czar of like government accountability, and start, looking at all the government's books and everything and all of these agencies and auditing them all, which would be yeah. But if Musk buys InfoWars, because InfoWars can't be worth as much as Twitter, right? Like, it's not going to be worth as much as Twitter. So if he can buy InfoWars and also own that, like, if you thought that the left's had exploded when he bought Twitter and turned it into X, if he buys InfoWars and like turns it into InfoX or something, oh my God, yes. the amazing, just, I love it for the memes, man. It's the same reason why I'm happy that Trump is running again. Like, I don't want to see that man elected. I don't want to see anybody elected. I am an anarchist. I don't want or need anyone in charge of my life. But the memes have been gold, just gold from this. And I mean, if you're old enough to remember back when Dan Quayle was involved in politics, right? When Dan Quayle was George Bush Sr.'s VP, and just the comedy that came out of that was just so amazing. But I wonder if it's a liability. I mean, it might be a liability issue with InfoWars. It might be where there's a reason that he hasn't immediately jumped on. I mean, he probably just doesn't want to jump on it because he just doesn't want it. Because honestly, who would really? But for the meme value and just the hilarity of the reactions that it would cause, like, if you can imagine the reaction to Trump getting elected, right, back in 2016, right? Remember that, and remember that reaction, and the lefties all throwing themselves on the floor and screaming in futility, right? So imagine now, right, 2024, Elon Musk owns Twitter. Elon Musk buys InfoWars. Donald Trump gets elected, and Elon Musk becomes the czar of government waste and efficiency for him. The mental implosion that will occur on the American political left will be a thing of absolute beauty. And I am here for all of it. Like, it's going to be incredible. Like, what you're probably going to witness happen is going to be a meltdown of biblical proportions. I am so fucking excited. I can't even tell you, to be honest. Like, that is going to be a thing, man. The streams of impotent rage shall echo in eternity. Glory. Just glory. And again, it's not because I particularly like Elon Musk either. He's also, the spawn of nepotism and not nearly as incredibly successful as he pretends that he is, and all sorts of things. But what he does to the left is what makes me happy. Because with as much as I hate Republicans, and I hate Republicans, boy, do I hate Democrats more. I'm trying to wait for Chris to show up, because there's some great things here that I really want to cover with him. Of course, all of the links to all of our articles are in the description, except for any hidden article that I may randomly bust out. But all the specific articles, links are all in the description, along with our link tree and everything else. And this one is probably safe for me to get to before Chris gets on, because I don't know how much longer he's gonna be. Gallup finds record high 80% of American adults say the nation is greatly divided on core values. A record high 8 in 10 American adults say the country is greatly divided on core values ahead of November's presidential election, a Gallup poll reported Monday. The polling company said the tally is up from a previous high of 77% the last time it surveyed the issue in 2016. It also shot up more than 10 percentage points from similar surveys in 2004 and 2012. Just 18% of those responding to this year's survey perceived the nation as united or in agreement about the most important values, according to Gallup, which first asked the question in 1993. Results were similar across all races, all political identities, all ages, and all other demographic groups. Today's doubts about national unity are likely informed by the closely contested presidential elections in recent years, as well as alternating partisan control of Congress that currently has a narrow Republican majority in the House of Representatives and a razor-thin Democratic majority in the Senate, said Jeffrey M. Jones, a Gallup senior editor. Mr. Jones and me. Sorry, that's a Counting Crows reference. Pointed to a 2023 survey that found significant party gaps between Republicans and Democrats on key policy positions. He noted the values surrounding the issues of federal government power, the environment, education, abortion, foreign trade, immigration, gun control, healthcare, and taxes saw the biggest increases in partisan differences over the past 2 decades. I just want to point out here, when you're talking about the saw the biggest increases, and you're listing like every major issue, I don't feel like you can say anything had the biggest increase. I think it was just everything. Again, let me read that again. He noted that values surrounding the issues of federal government power, the environment, education, abortion, foreign trade, immigration, gun control, healthcare, and taxes saw the biggest increases in partisan differences. Is there a major political issue that falls outside of that at all? Because I don't really think there is. I think that pretty much covers the gamut. That kind of covers everything, doesn't it? Like that's kind of the works. So like, what saw the biggest trends? Yes. That is just holy shit. In 3 decades of Gallup surveys, the only time that most adults said the nation was greatly united came after September 11th, 2001. Gosh, I wonder what the purpose of that was. Oh, sorry, we're not supposed to say that. We're supposed to, yeah. The company noted that a record high 74%, just going to mention Wag the dog, that's all I'm going to say. 74% of adults responding to a November 2001 survey said the country was united and in agreement about essential values. In a September 2002 survey, 69%, nice, of adults said the same. Quote, the terrorist attacks led to a surge in patriotism and Americans rallying around their political leaders and institutions, Mr. Jones wrote in a summary of findings. Historically, adults responding to Gallup's occasional surveys have been much more likely to perceive unity in the nation when their political party controls the White House. That gap narrowed to a statistical tie in the latest survey, with just 19% of self-identified Democrats saying the nation was united. Democrats were 4 percentage points more likely to make this claim than Republicans and 1 percentage point more likely than independents, both within the poll's margin of error. Gallup conducted a randomized national telephone survey of 1,015 adults on August 1st through the 20th. The margin of error was plus or minus 4 percentage points at the 95% confidence level. So basically, it is potentially possible that literally no one thinks any more than anyone else that we are united, that everyone agrees that we are incredibly divided on absolutely everything. And I think, increasingly, this is one of those things that I keep bringing up to people is I don't know that it's reconcilable anymore. I think that there was maybe a turning back point, and we are far beyond that. And what I see every day, as I look through news articles and things for this show and whatnot, is that things are just getting worse. We are just getting more divided. People are just getting more desperate. Things are getting, more towards World War freaking 3. All of these things keep happening. And I don't know that I see a path to reconciliation between the extreme left and the extreme right. And I don't know that there's much that is left or right that is not to one of the extremes anymore. Like, what I'm seeing is this massive polarization. And I think that the last time that the United States saw this level of polarization and this level of, like, you were either on this side of this issue or this side of this issue, you don't get to sit on the fence. You don't get to be like, well, I can see their point at all, was in the barely antebellum Union. I mean, like 1863, 1864. That's kind of the last time, or I mean, sorry, 1859, 1858. Sorry. Like that time period was the last time that I think that we were this divided. And by the time you get to 63, 64, which is where I was trying to go here, by the time you get to 63, 64, we're already a couple of years into the American Civil War. And I don't know that anyone's political positions have changed any. Like, we're still actively fighting the war. The the Democrats have, seceded in favor of slavery. The American Republicans have, not seceded. You have a mostly Republican majority in Kentucky and Maryland. They don't secede, although Maryland kind of turns into a rebellious state without actually seceding, but that's a whole political rant for another time. But I mean, this is the last time that we saw this kind of serious division between the two. I mean, we didn't even necessarily quite to this scale see this kind of division going into the American Revolution. There were a lot of people heading into the American Revolution who, while they weren't Tories, right, they didn't want to fight to preserve British rule in the American colonies. They also didn't really want to rebel, and they kind of sat in the middle. And the majority of colonists going into the American Revolution really sat in the middle. You don't really have that anymore. Like, the majority of people really don't sit in the middle. Like, they have very strong opinions on one thing or another. Does that necessarily mean they'd be willing to go to war? No, but that is how wars start, isn't it? Especially civil wars. Which are, unfortunately, anything but civil. Oh, speaking of things that divide America, so John Kerry, you remember that guy, former presidential candidate, weird dude. He was speaking before the World Economic Forum. You may have heard of them. Eat the bugs. And while speaking before them, he calls the First Amendment a roadblock to democratic efforts to build consensus around issues. That's right. The right to free speech is a roadblock to consensus. If you haven't seen that video, it's all over X. But he literally called it a roadblock to consensus. He basically says in the video, right? What he says is that, well, the First Amendment, basically, he says that we need to do away with it because the First Amendment gets in the way of governments suppressing misinformation to make sure that we build consensus on issues so that the government can take action. Just marinate on that a moment. You know, the last time that I can think of most recently that somebody very vehemently thought that we should have control on media and over free speech in the name of making sure that we built a consensus on issues was the Soviet fucking Union. Just saying. And, you know, before that, Nazi Germany. Also, Joseph Goebbels was a big fan of the idea of building consensus through control of the media. A real big fan of that. But don't forget that you have politicians not that long ago at the WEF complaining that the Second Amendment gets in the way of them doing things that they really want to do. You have Barack Obama, when he was president, who complained that the founding fathers put a system in place that doesn't really allow me to do the things that I want to do. You have consistently the American political left complaining about the Constitution and specifically the Bill of Rights and endlessly complaining about it because it, quote, gets in the way of building consensus. It gets in their way of running government the way that they want. The Bill of Rights. When you have a political group that is saying we need to take people's rights away so that we can tell them what to think, this should kind of be as big a red flag as you can possibly get about those politics. I mean, that's horrifying. Like that's the Ministry of Truth, right? This is Orwellian, where if you've never read 1984, first of all, go read it. If your kids haven't read 1984 and are at least 14 years old, send them to go read it. Get them a copy. Have them read that. Because all of what we're seeing now is so predicted by 1984. It's so predicted by 1984. Even like offhand comments that are made by other government officials in 1984 apply. Like if you remember where they talked about trying to reduce the population through increasing sterility, right? And that's that like offhand conversation that he witnesses and stuff is like part of that a conference or whatever that he goes to. Like these are all things that like George Orwell predicted way back. And 1984 just absolutely encapsulates what we're seeing. And Animal Farm, right? You should also read Animal Farm because Animal Farm, Squealer, right, is basically what Kamala Harris is trying to do. just pretend that these things aren't true and just keep saying things over and over and over again and hoping that people will just forget that they were ever false because they just hear them so loud and so long that they can't even remember what the truth used to be. This is like what Kerry is talking about. And he's talking about to the WEF, right? To the World Economic Forum. Like, these are the people who openly advocate for population controls and openly advocate that basically like only the elites should get food and everyone else can eat bugs and all that crap. These are the people that he's going, yeah, unfortunately, this whole like right to free speech thing is kind of getting in the way of us making sure that everyone just thinks the things that we should make sure that they think. Darn that free speech. Like, when that happens, when you are upset about free speech, not because, oh, but it's hurtful, it's not even that anymore, but because it's in the way of you making people think what you want them to think. This is as tyrannical and blatantly tyrannical as tyrannical gets. Like, this is the shit that is why the Second Amendment was written right here. That kind of thing. And don't forget that John Kerry is just as involved in the Democratic Party still. The party of Kamala Harris, the party of Joe Biden, the party of the change, right? The party of fucking Tim Walz. He's just as involved with all that shit as he ever was. It's not like he's walked away from it. Like, this is what these people think. They're saying the quiet things out loud because with the Harris Biden administration, they've been able to get away with saying so much of the quiet shit out loud for so fucking long that they honestly don't think anything's going to happen if they continue to do it. So they just keep saying it. And the sad reality is that if more people aren't going to wake up, if more people aren't going to pay attention to this and they're not going to notice what's being said and they're not going to notice that these things are happening, they're going to be able to get away with it. And everyone's just going to sit there and they're going to be the frogs that are getting boiled, right? Because they're not even going to notice that they're getting hot until it's too late. And they're going to keep letting this get done. And you keep seeing this happen where the even on the political right, people are screaming for all of these things to be used against Democrats and used against illegal aliens and used against all of these people they perceive as their enemies, without noticing that the tyrannical, the draconian powers that you give to government today will almost certainly be used against you tomorrow. And case in point to that I specifically wanted to bring up on this podcast. Let me find it here. So a while back, the governor of Florida signed a law. And that law was basically, it allowed the forcible restriction of gun rights when a national emergency or a state of emergency is declared. And it was billed as being aimed at when Antifa and BLM and things riot. And so the American political right just lost their minds celebrating, right? Like, they love celebrating what Florida does, that, oh, it's against them dams, her, and completely lost the point. And those of us at the time when this happened who pointed out, but this is going to be used against you. This is going to be used anytime there's an emergency. It's not just going to be used against the left. They all called us conspiracy theorists. They all said that we were defending Antifa, that we were defending communists and all this other crap, right? That's what these people said, because this is how the political right in America works. Because if you thought that the political right was going to get away without me tearing into them on this show, you are very wrong. The political right sat there and they said, well, this is only going to, this is so that we can stop them darn BLM activists and them darn Antifas. Okay. That's what they said. And that's what this was for. However, If you're keeping up with the news and not living under a rock, you are aware that a hurricane recently hit the state of Florida. And this hurricane that hit the state of Florida resulted in a state of emergency being declared. And if you look at the declaration from the state of emergency, you will notice that it, like for instance, in Okeechobee, said declaration prohibits the following acts for the duration of the declared state of emergency per Florida statute 870.00044. This is the one that was signed in to stop Antifa. Quote, the sale of or offer to sell with or without consideration any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description, the intentional display by or in any store or shop of any ammunition or gun or other firearm of any size or description, the intentional possession in a public place of a firearm by any person except a duly authorized law enforcement official or person in military service acting in the official performance of their duty.
So absolutely no displaying of firearms or ammunition of any kind if you're a civilian.
Exactly. Because state of emergency.
Yep.
But don't worry though. This was about Antifa. It was stopping Antifa. It's not like they just take everyone's gun rights away at every drop of the hat.
You mean like they did in New Orleans?
Yeah, not like that. No, they'd never do, except that's exactly what they just fucking did.
Yep. Took away your ability to protect yourself from what inevitably will be a massive crime wave, because there always is after these storms.
Yeah. Like think about all of the abandoned right now that are temporarily abandoned mansions
and
all
damaged
over Florida.
I mean, not even just the mansions. Just think of the damaged homes. Like you could walk through just about any residential neighborhood in any city in Florida right now and find plenty of right pickings.
Yeah, and what they've done is essentially say you are not allowed to go outside your home and try and defend your property. If you are trying to evacuate or you are trying to go to and from, say, like an emergency relief station with supplies, and somebody wants to ambush you and try and take those supplies from you, you're not allowed legally now in Florida, at least around Okeechobee, where the state of emergency is called. Yeah, to defend yourself, because you're not allowed to have a gun on you.
Now, hold up. I didn't see a link to that notice. I've heard about it, but I didn't see a link to that one. Is that in the list?
It is not in the list. That was something I saw immediately before I went live, actually.
Oh.
I will put it in the group chat here real quick so that you can see it, because holy fucking shit. There it is.
So the declaration prohibits the following acts: the sale, offer to sell, or with or without consideration gun, intentionally display, potential possession in a public place of any of armor. Yep. So yeah, that little subsection C is what absolutely fucks everybody.
Yep. Except not everybody, because it doesn't affect criminals who aren't obligated or looking to obey a law in the first place.
That went without saying, especially for our crowd. But yeah.
Yeah.
So if they're going to be armed and dangerous, and if the state's going to be armed and dangerous, guess what? You should be too.
Yeah, the only people that laws like this disarm, like all gun laws, the only people that they disarm are the law abiding. They do not disarm the truly dangerous.
Under the authority of City Ordinance 1297.
Yep, and because and remember that, so this is, I don't know if you joined, I didn't notice exactly when you joined, Did you
About
join
the
when I
time
was?
you started ranting right before you read the whole notice.
Okay, yeah. So this is based on that law that the governor just signed into law, like I think less than a year ago. That was a billed to everyone on the political right as an anti-Antifa riot law.
Right. Yeah. Per Florida statute 570044.
And that was what it was billed as. And all these people, when myself and a number of other anarchists online pointed out to all these right-wing people that, hey, the draconian laws that you support government adopting today are going to get used against you tomorrow. And they all went, oh, you're trying to defend communists. And we're like, no, I'm trying to defend fucking freedom. A thing that you're willing to sacrifice as long as your sacrifice of your freedom also hurts the other guy, which is stupid and suicidal.
870044 automatic emergency measures. Whenever the public official declares the state of emergency exists pursuant to statute 870.043, the following acts shall be prohibited during the period of said emergency throughout the jurisdiction. Everything on that notice.
Yeah, no more guns.
Yep.
Oh,
and that would also impact you, even though it's not considered a public area because everything is destroyed. They can declare it a public area for the purposes of investigating damage claims and stuff like that. So they can even rule that your home is a public area if it sustained damage during the storm.
Which means you don't even have a right to defend yourself in your own home from looters. But hey, it was all about Antifa, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we all knew it wasn't. Anybody with any sense knew it wasn't. But all those neocons and all the fuckheads that are right now running around going, Donald Trump is going to save America. They're the ones that are going to be we're sitting there going, oh, they're going to stop Antifa from affecting anybody in Florida.
Don't forget though, these are the same people. These are the same people who are like, oh, it's going to stop. Donald Trump is going to save America. Don't worry about that law. That law is to stop Antifa. These are the same people who, when Donald Trump banned bump stocks, a thing that they freaked out when Barack Obama did, they went, well, I don't need a bump stock anyway.
It's just a stupid accessory.
Yeah, it's an accessory. And they bent over backwards to try and justify why it was okay.
And then in Cargill, the Supreme Court went, fuck you, no.
Yeah. And then the FPC wins again and overturns, remember, Trump's bump stock ban, which is why of all of the FPC victories lately, you'll notice that is the one that you do not see people on the political right celebrating.
Yep. Because it means that Donald Trump got his hand slapped.
Yep, because it was against Donald Trump, and it means that Donald Trump did something unconstitutional, and they can't have that because cult of fucking personality.
Yep. Oh man. But I will say this: I'm glad that got struck down in such strong terms. Like if you actually read the opinion, it's an absolute beatdown on the ATF. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
I love that happened because that was the precedent set by Donald Trump that led to the Biden administration with their pistol brace rule and the frames and receivers rule.
Which FPC is also actively taking to the Supreme Court as of yesterday, I believe.
Did they get a final merits decision in the Fifth Circuit?
I believe they did. From what I saw on their Twitter, I believe I saw that it is heading to the Supreme Court.
I know the frames and receiver rule was. I didn't know the pistol brace one was.
I'm pretty sure they both did, but it might have just been frame and receiver.
Exactly, Schaller. Exactly. Emperor Cheeto protected my rights.
Yeah, no, Donald, take the guns first, due process second, never cared about your gun rights.
Donald, I don't like suppressors Trump.
Yeah, we need to do something about suppressors. He said silencers, though. He said, I don't like silencers. We need to do something about silencers, which technically, I'll give him, is what they should be called.
Well, that's the original Maxim patent.
Right, because that's the original name for them. I actually have, do I have it on my wall? No, I don't.
I thought you did.
One that I have down below. I think it's one that I have down below, but I do have a copy of the original patent of the Maxim. I think I don't have it on my wall because it was a weird dimension.
Yeah, to be perfectly fair to Donald Trump's statement there, I do agree that we do need to do something about silencers, but the ones that we put on our cars, because they're the same fucking thing.
Yes. Yeah, actually, they are inspired by what Maxim developed. Hiram P. Maxim.
Yep.
Not Hiram J. I think Maxim.
I think it was J. Yeah.
So Hiram J. Maxim machine gun, which, by the way, he developed before the 20th century, motherfuckers.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with Schaller. We do need to do something about silencers and suppressors. They should come with every firearm sold. Just like if you go to a gun store in the Czech Republic and you buy a gun, they are required by law to recommend you buy one to go on whatever firearm you just bought.
About the only nation in the world that regulates suppressors
is the U.S.
Is the United States. And you know why?
Because of it was the Red Scare.
Yeah, because in 1934, when the NFA was being drafted with the full assistance of the NRA, when that was happening, there was a fear that two things were going to be used by communist assassins: silencers and short-barreled rifles. Yep. And that is why the United States is basically the only country in the world that cares about silencers or short-barreled rifles.
Also, fun fact, in the original passing of the NFA, rifles and shotguns were both minimally required to be 18.5 inches long. And when they passed the GCA in 1968, they shortened the rifle requirement to 16 because they had a whole bunch of M1As in their surplus inventory that they wanted to sell, and they couldn't sell them to the American public because their barrels were too short.
Yeah. Well, it's also why, don't forget, when the GCA passes, right, 68, you have the amnesty.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I love about the amnesty, I brought this up like years ago on this show, but if you're a newer listener, you probably haven't heard me rant about this. The thing that I love about the amnesty is that the letter of the amnesty said that if you registered an automatic weapon under the amnesty, you could not be prosecuted in any way for ownership of that firearm. That is what it said, which means there were multiple violent convicted felons with fully automatic weapons who went, and we have record of it, who went and registered automatic weapons under the 68 amnesty and were legally allowed to possess that firearm forever.
Because of I love it. I have not heard that before, but that's hysterical.
You go back and read if you read the text, that is what it says, is if you register this thing, no one can ever prosecute you for you having this because you came and registered it. That was the amnesty. And there were 100 plus firearms stolen from American military armories that were registered under the 68 amnesty.
That doesn't surprise me.
Because again,
there's probably 40,000 firearms that mysteriously disappear out of U.S. inventory, on almost an annual fucking basis. I don't know where they went.
The one and only fully transferable M16 I have ever actually thought about buying was stolen originally out of an American armory. And you
And
can
listed on the
see on
68
it,
amnesty.
yes, because it's a 68 amnesty gun. And what they did is they stole it and then they ground off the serial number and Electra penciled in an entirely new one. And because it was registered under the 68 amnesty, no one can ever prosecute that firearm.
I love it. That's awesome.
It is a glorious thing. I looked at it and I was like, this is a property of US government, but this is a pre-68. Like this, what? And the guy was like, oh yeah, you want to hear the story about this gun? It's fucking hilarious. And
speaking of guns and that vintage and older, did you know, and this is going to make us both feel old, but whatever. The earliest civilian production AR-15 rifles are now CNR eligible.
Oh yeah, they have been for over a year.
Oof.
Over a year. Yes, which is also something I love to bring up. I love to bring up to hoplophobes when they're like freaking out about guns.
Oh yeah.
And like, oh well, the modern fire. Well, how would you define a firearm? Oh, a firearm from the past 50 years. Well, funny you should say that because
right.
if I had a CNR, I could order an M16 from someone else, purchase it, and have it shipped to my home.
But we don't want to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, and again, the original Maxim, right? The very first pattern of Maxim, which is ultimately the pattern that gets used to create the MG08.
Yep.
Right, for the Germans heading into World War I, which becomes the MG08-15, which is allegedly a light machine gun, but if you've ever handled one, I assure you the word light is an incredibly subjective thing. Because I think it's like 60 pounds. Like, it's not light.
I mean, it's still man portable. Ish.
Sorta.
Would be better on a rail car, but hey.
Over very short distances, yes, a human being can pick it up and carry it. However,
let's mount it to a pallet. Let's mount it to a pallet, and you got two guys like the old like Roman litters.
Yeah,
the emperor
so the MG08. Speaking of that, so the MG08 actually had like one of the typical setups, the mounts for the MG08 that the Germans had during World War I is called a sled mount. And the sled mount is a 4-legged mount. So it's not a tripod, it's 4 legs. Mm-hmm. And it's got these like curved bits where you can fold the legs up and drag it with one person like a sled to places. But what they also did is that you could release the legs and fold them out all the way. And they were the exact same width and handle length as a stretcher. And so 2 guys could lift it up and carry it places fairly easily.
That's just German ingenuity.
Oh, if you look at that mount too, the mount is amazing for Maxim mounts from World War I think it's one of the best. You had a pair of extra, I think, bolts. I think it held like 3 extra barrels or something. Like it was amazing. Like it was just such a cool mount. The mount itself weighs like 50 pounds. The gun, the MG08, especially with the jacket full of water, weighs something like 90 pounds. So It's well over 100 pounds between the two, but between 2 guys, it's really not that bad to pick up and move.
Well, yeah. And if it's the length of a stretcher, when you fold out the legs proper, then, I mean, you could easily put 4 guys on it and really hump that thing around.
Yeah, if you really, really needed to, you could move very quickly. However, I mean, generally they were statically mounted and whatnot. Because also remember that the 4 legs are not adjustable in length.
Right.
So if you're on uneven ground, that's going to present a problem. Uh, but
Find a rock and hope that
well,
rock isn't the UXO.
a rock or something.
Rockers, exactly.
But it's, like but generally they were statically mounted anyway. But like, keep in mind though that the MG08, right? That's 1908. That is when they finalized their design. It's based on the earliest Maxim, which is from before 1900. In fact, the earliest versions of the Maxim are old enough to not truly be considered firearms under American law.
That doesn't surprise me, actually. That doesn't surprise me at all, because the original Maxim models were late 1800s.
Right. So, but I'm just saying, like, so if you're keeping track, right? Like these people, these hoplophobes that go, oh, well, modern firearms, you didn't have the earliest versions of the first machine gun are so early that they are not actually late enough to be considered firearms. The Colt single action army can be concealed carried anywhere you fucking want because it is not considered a firearm.
It is considered an antique and therefore not regulated.
Exactly. Even though it still uses center fire fucking cartridges.
Yeah.
Has a rifle barrel.
Oh, and there were some of the early smaller wheel guns from that era too, that, because you had like 32 Smith and stuff like that were that old that
the Baby Browning barely isn't.
Right. And there's not a fucking thing they could do about it. Yeah, what is that? It's an antique.
A machine gun. We're not even talking Gatling gun, okay? You don't have to keep cranking. No, this is a full-on machine gun. A belt-fed machine gun, and it is early enough to not be considered a firearm. But sit there and tell me but the guns that we have now, that isn't what that's...
Yeah. I mean, the one that I always look back to is like the Puckle gun. Yes, it was a crew-served weapon, but the idea that they couldn't possibly have fathomed modern firearms because they didn't have, because all they had was, muskets and long rifles. No, they had the idea.
There was the Puckle gun is fairly rare. And so, like, while it definitely has become the most popular example, it is, I don't think, the best example. There's like 4 Italian-made repeating guns from the era, from the mid 17th century, that one of which for certain the founding fathers were aware of because at least 2 of them owned one. There's
that British one too. I don't remember what it was called, but it's got the flash pan, and the flash pan, you just slide it back because you could progressively load more and more charges. So you slide it back to each indexing hole and fire again.
Yeah, there's a few different ones. Some of the Italian ones are the best because Italians were expert gunsmiths in the 16th, 17th century, heading into the 18th century. Like, the Italians were fantastic gunsmiths. That is a thing that has changed. But back then, they were fantastic.
Anyone who's ever is still a good gun.
I was gonna say, anyone who's ever...
No sound from you, Andrew.
Really?
Oh.
You sure? Because I'm not muted, bro.
No, my headset decided to do something goofy.
Okay. Yeah, so like the Italians, like, okay, I'll give them the Benelli M4, right? But anyone who's ever handled an M9 does not believe that the Italians are expert guns.
No. The M2, M3, and M4. I like those. Anything else? No. Just no. Beretta, I don't think I have ever handled a Beretta that I actually enjoyed firing.
And the Storm's pretty cool.
It's okay. No. If I had to choose between a Storm and a Kel-Tec, I'd probably take the Kel-Tec.
Well, okay, there's the Kel-Tec. There's also, I would rather have a CZ Scorpion. Like, if I'm going to get a PCC anyway, like, let's make it a decent PCC. But
that new
really,
FPC, the new FPC that Smith & Wesson has, they have the Smith & Wesson PC carbine, and then they have the Smith & Wesson FPC carbine. And the folding, the FPC is folding. So instead of like the Kel-Tec that goes like this,
right,
it goes like this. So you can leave your optic mounted.
Oh, nice. That is.
I got to shoot the 9mm version of that the other day.
Actually, really, if I was going to get a PCC, I'm going to say it's a B&T without hesitation. Just like if I'm going to get a suppressor, I'm either going to get something from Q because somehow I've won the lottery, or I'm going to get a B&T.
Or a Knights. I've seen Knights suppressors. They're really nice. But again, I have to have won the lottery first.
Yeah, the B&Ts are the really, I love B&Ts. And America almost has no idea what B&T suppressors are like, because you guys don't really have B&Ts over here.
Right.
There is a place that you can
Griffin makes good suppressors.
Griffin, and they're a Wisconsin company.
Yep.
I have an ex sort of girlfriend who worked for them for a little bit. I'm not really girlfriend, like we never did. Anyway, in any case,
things happened. We don't talk about
it. I knew a chick who worked for Griffin Armory not long ago, and yeah, the Griffin's pretty solid. But I also have to laugh because I asked Griffin if they thought that in one of their lives, if they thought that novel manufacturing processes and novel materials were the future of suppressors, and they were like, no, I mean, why? And well, we know how that worked out now a couple years later. So
yeah, just look at Myanmar.
Well, look at, I mean, as far as like I was talking about like 3D sintering, right? Like metal sintering and using that. And, and B&T has been doing that for a little while. Their latest suppressor is like that. The American military now, their newest suppressor for the machine gun that is the counterpart to the spear, the SIG spear, is using a 3D printed suppressor, which is super cool. If you haven't looked into it, like, it is the neatest suppressor I've ever seen for a machine gun.
That's a new one I haven't seen.
Oh, it's like, so it's got cooling vents around the outside of it that function the way that the cooling shield did on a Lewis gun, where it uses the low pressure zone behind the bullet to draw air in to the suppressor and then shove it out the front. So it keeps the suppressor cool, so the suppressor can actually handle sustained machine gun fire without melting.
That's wild.
And they were only able to do it because of 3D printing. Oh, dude, it's so cool. You got to look into it. It is a cool suppressor. But speaking of gun rights and stuff, though, I do want to talk about this because I thought this was a really neat article. The Supreme Court expanded gun rights that could complicate the Trump assassination attempt case.
What?
So, oh God, the way this thing loaded is a terrible thing. The Supreme Court's recent decision on Second Amendment rights have unleashed a flood of constitutional challenges to longstanding gun laws, including one being used to prosecute the man who allegedly tried to assassinate Donald Trump on his golf course. Last week? 2 weeks ago? Something like that.
I think it's about 2 weeks ago now.
Ryan Routh was arrested, charged with violating the federal ban on people with prior felony convictions possessing firearms. That ban has long been a central part of federal gun control efforts, but many of those charged under the statute, along with some gun rights advocates, argue that the law is unconstitutional. The issue has sown, because it is. The issue has sown confusion in lower courts, and legal experts say it may soon be resolved by the Supreme Court. Quote, this kind of split among the federal courts is one of the biggest predictors of whether the Supreme Court will step into a controversy, said Adam Winkler, a law professor at UCLA and an expert on the Second Amendment. Okay. Anyway.
In California, there's no such thing except maybe Roger T. Benitez.
Yeah, no, he's really not, but yeah, that's the credit that who wrote this? Politico. This is the credit that Politico is giving him.
I mean, it's Politico.
Yeah. It's too soon to know what kind of defense Routh will mount, and any constitutional challenge may provide limited benefit considering his potential legal jeopardy. The 58-year-old man was arrested on Sunday in Florida after a Secret Service agent allegedly spotted him waiting with a semi-automatic rifle at a golf course while the former president played nearby. He is scheduled to appear this past Monday at a court hearing in West Palm Beach, where a judge will determine whether he can be released on bail. So far, prosecutors have charged Routh with 2 crimes: possessing a gun with an obliterated serial number and possessing a gun as a felon. Prosecutors could move to add other charges later, including attempted assassination of the president, something that they actually have done since this article was posted. Those previous convictions mean that Routh is covered by the federal felon in possession ban, which carries a 15-year maximum prison sentence. But in recent years, courts have tussled over the continued validity of the ban, which they should, because if I commit a felony and then can't own a gun, that's a life sentence.
Yep. Not only that, but if you are safe enough to be allowed out into the public at large, you should be safe enough to own a firearm to protect yourself and your family.
Right.
I don't care.
Exactly.
I don't care what the crime is. And I probably stand on a very small island with that, but I don't care what the crime is. But if you are safe enough to be allowed out into the general public, then you should be allowed to be armed.
Well, and I don't think so. I don't really want to read the rest of this, but the gist of it is that in light of Bruin, because Bruin says that you need to have a historical, early American historical basis for your gun laws. Well, it wasn't until the 20th century that felons weren't allowed to possess firearms.
Yep.
So there's no historical basis for the ban.
Yeah, I mean, even in pre-colonial or pre-U.S. law, they didn't have bans on you not being able to own a firearm for personal protection or anything, even if you had been in the stocks or whatever, however many number of times. And back in those days, if you committed a capital crime, like say murder or rape, they just fucking killed you.
Yeah, well, and this is the thing, right? Is that like, one, felonies are a fairly recent thing. They didn't truly exist back.
No, they called it, even in the Constitution, they called it high crimes and misdemeanors.
Yeah, there's high crimes and there's misdemeanors, and high crimes are treason,
right?
Like murder. But the thing is even murder wasn't necessarily a felony, because like there are plenty of murderers who went on to become some of the most famous lawmen in American history.
Earp.
Yeah, Wyatt Earp. The Tom Horn. There's a couple of others that I can't think of offhand, but I know exist. But yeah, there a lot of the lawmen that ultimately got hired to protect as sheriffs and stuff to protect Western towns in the 19th century. They were men who had records. They were men who were felons, and they got hired.
Well, and they got hired because I was going to say they got hired because everybody knew that they weren't afraid to use it.
Exactly.
There were no Barney Fifes.
Yeah, they weren't afraid to use it. They knew how to use it. Like that's why they got hired. But yeah, I just thought that was interesting that that's happening, that we're actually seeing like anti-Trump, very hardcore lefties, like because their own assassin has gotten caught. that like they're now going, well, but the gun laws say, and suddenly you care about the Second Amendment. Suddenly you support Bruin. And I think that's real interesting. Real interesting. Speaking of, though, people that lefties love because to have guns, Seattle cops lose track of 23 guns and have absolutely no idea where they went.
Somebody finally decided to take possession of the product of their tax dollars. And I, for one, am here for it.
So this goes on the back of, I saw an article from a couple of years ago that it turned out that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police had lost track of more than 1,200 firearms in less than a year.
Yes, I remember that.
Including full auto machine guns. So this is hilarious. So the Office of the Washington State Auditor is looking into the loss of 23 firearms after Seattle police reported them missing in August. Seattle police confirmed on Thursday. The guns haven't been accounted for since 2017.
Almost a decade. These things have been missing.
Where'd your gun go? This discovery, made after an internal accounting of missing weapons, comes amid a long-time push by city leadership to address gun violence and rid Seattle streets of stolen firearms. Apparently, half of them are stolen from the police.
Just so you know, ladies and gentlemen, if you see a squad car parked on the side of the road, there is a free AR-15 and pump-action shotgun.
There's a dude on YouTube who does a thing about the magnetic locks that hold them in place and how easy they are to defeat. Not that I'm telling anyone to go use that information for anything.
This is absolutely hypothetical.
I'm saying, like, this explains how some of these guns have gone missing, is the fact that you can basically take a magnet and go unlock and then just pull the gun out. So, former Mayor Jenny Durkin passed local legislation in 2018 requiring that residents lock up their guns to keep them out of the hands of children and criminals, because that works well. It also highlights the department's struggle in keeping their weapons secure. A separate inquiry found vulnerabilities with firearm storage after a teenager walked out of a police department with a gun in 2019.
Just mine now. Bye.
Patrick Michaud, spokesperson for Seattle Police, said it's uncommon for guns to go missing. Obviously not.
23 since 2017? No, that's not an uncommon occurrence anymore.
Oh, no, not 23 since 2017. 23 by 2017. We don't know how many have gone missing since.
You're right. That makes it even fucking funnier.
Quote, "We're going to do our best to ensure that we do better," Michaud said. "Until we find them, we're going to keep looking for them."
The missing guns include 18 Glock pistol lower frames from the training unit, a modified shotgun incapable of firing bullets from the training unit, a lower from a Glock 22 from the police range, a Woodstock shotgun from either the range or from the quartermaster.
Either the range or the quartermaster, which means they don't know.
And a pistol and a rifle from the locker of an officer who returned from military leave to find them gone.
Which means it was probably another cop who...
Wow.
And these are entirely possibly, especially when it comes to the rifles, these are entirely possibly full auto.
Yes, absolutely. That's awesome.
What I love about this article, because it's a Washington State article, is it says, although a gun contains several pieces, just a few, the only part that is legally considered a firearm is the lower portion, which is not true.
There are
the frame or lower receiver. Yeah, that's not true. It's there is one part that needs to be serialized, is the receiver. Oh, here's the best part about this article, though. It says the frame or lower receiver, which includes the grip and houses the trigger. They're missing the full definition.
Yes, they are.
The legal definition.
requires the action to be part of that receiver in order for it to be considered a receiver.
The action to be part of or to be mounted within.
Yep.
That part, as well as the chamber.
Yep. To which you can say that there is no portion on an AR-15 pattern firearm that meets that definition. Exactly. So technically, none of them are firearms.
Yep. Which is why the ATF always abandons any prosecution of anybody about having ARs as soon as they make that argument. Anyway, although a gun contains several pieces, blah, blah, blah.
Buying this part or a full firearm requires a background check in Washington State, but the top portion or slide of the gun can be bought online without restriction.
That's only applicable to the Glocks. That's not applicable to the rifles or the shotguns.
Well, yeah, you can buy the upper receivers without background check.
Right, but they're not called a slide, is my point.
No.
They're not called a slide. Right. So like this is where this article is very clearly Washington, which is why I love to point this out. Since police discovered the weapons were missing, their serial numbers have been entered into the National Crime Information Center, so the NICS. And if the gun turns up elsewhere, they'll be notified.
Those serial numbers are long gone. It's been 7 years at least since those guns went missing. Those serial numbers are long gone. Those firearms are probably sitting in your evidence lockup right now because they were picked up being used in a crime elsewhere.
Oh yeah. And those serial numbers are easy to obliterate. They're gone. This isn't the first time the department has lost a gun. In October of 2019, an 18-year-old walked out of a training building with a police officer's personal firearm. The teenager, who attended a police education program for youth, ultimately threw the stolen weapon from his vehicle off a bridge. Police later recovered it from the top of a building 3 days later. Literally anyone could have grabbed it.
That's awesome.
Anyone could have grabbed it and just been like, cool, I got a Glock 17. Yay me.
McRod also wrote that the department has since changed its audit schedule to require a quarterly audit of firearms and are researching additional technology options that can automate the, quote, tracking of the sensitive items. It could be a QR code, could be a sticker of some sort, could be something else entirely. Could you imagine QR code? I'm just checking in. Beep.
Yeah, right. So look at this. So they found some vulnerabilities when they did investigation 2021. Some vulnerabilities. In one annex, firearms were stored in a metal cabinet, quote, designed to store office supplies, end quote, with plastic bins and numbered trays. The cabinet was meant to be secured with a padlock during training and the key kept by a security officer. In the second annex, firearms were stored in a single room that contained individual lockers. In this case, it was only the outer door that was intended to be secured by a padlock during training.
They didn't even lock the lockers?
No, only the outer door. This place is literally less secure than the supply closet at Fort Benning.
This is less secure than my workspace at my employer. I have to go through 4 secure doors to get to my desk.
There are quartermasters all over the country right now whose eyes are just twitching over this description of how this stuff is secured. Because like what do quartermasters always laugh about, right? Like the moment that any of them turn their back, every single E1 through E4 is going, okay, just going to steal some stuff real quick here. We're just going to take some of these and a couple of these, and we're going to grab one of these. Like, I don't even need 56 pens, but you know what? Quartermaster had his fucking back turned, and they were right there for my hands. So I now have 56 pens. And
then when his inventory comes up and those 56 pens come up missing, he goes, what the fuck? And has an absolute conniption.
Oh, notebooks, pens, anything. If it's within reach, we're stealing it, man. Like, and everybody's like, don't even pretend that y'all ain't like that in your supply closets to work. You know you are.
How many people here? I mean, I'm not saying I would ever do such a thing, but how many people have gone to their supply closet, because you have the central repository, right? You have in our case, it's called materials management. Your department orders some supplies, say 15 reams of paper. You look at it and go, we don't need 15 reams of paper in this department. But you know what I need at home? I need some printer paper. And all of a sudden, that ream of paper just disappears, and everybody goes, oh. Must be in the printer.
Who's counting? Yeah, who's counting? There you go. Here's my favorite part, though. Here's my favorite part of this article. The investigation report pointed out that the training storage system failed to meet requirements that applied to civilian gun owners at the time.
Well, duh. We all know. Everybody around us knows. Rules for thee, not for me. These are government agents. They're not beholden to the same rules and restrictions as the rest of us. They never have been. And until they start seeing legitimate consequences for it, they never will be.
No. And why would it? Because remember that every single one of these laws exempts police.
Yes.
Oh, this is great. The investigation also found that a year after the stolen gun incident, police leaders still failed to secure the annexes. Receipts showed the assistant chief of the Collaborative Police Bureau at the time purchased 20 padlocks, sold in 4 packs, all using the same keys, to secure the firearms in the second annex. Investigators said that the purchased locks weren't being used until 2020.
Well, hold up. They bought locks trying to secure the room. They bought them in 4 packs, with every lock in each 4 pack using the same fucking key.
Yes. So 5 keys would open all of the padlocks.
I don't know if I should laugh or cry. I legitimately do not know whether or not I should laugh or cry at this.
We can only trust the police with guns because they're the only ones with the proper training.
Well, a lot of those padlocks can be defeated with simple things, like a hammer or a magnet, which is a great segue to another story if you didn't cover it.
I was going to say, it's funny that you should mention magnets, police, and guns. Disorganized circus. That's a quote. Disorganized circus. Cop gun gets stuck on MRI machine in illegal raid.
Not a legal raid, an illegal raid.
And get this, and this is, wait for it, because it gets so much better than that headline. It gets so much better. The Los Angeles Police Department suspected a medical center was secretly growing marijuana,
What the fuck?
which is legal in case you're unfamiliar in the state of California, and searched the facility in a raid that left an MRI machine damaged after an officer's loose rifle got stuck onto it. A federal lawsuit says. We're not talking about the top end of a Glock flying through the air. This is a full-on AR sailing into the MRI.
Barrel first.
There was no basis for the raid, according to a complaint, which says it was illegal and supported by a single officer's lies. The LAPD officers didn't find any cannabis plants at NoHo Diagnostic Center in Los Angeles, Van Nuys neighborhood, October 18th, 2023. But they continued to, quote, roam freely around the facility after releasing an employee they detained, according to a complaint filed September 18th. Okay, so if you're keeping track, so they believe that a single employee, they believe that a single employee was illegally growing marijuana plants in a state that has legalized recreational marijuana within the grounds of the hospital. Okay. This is what spawns the raid. A single officer lies, says that he has information that this is happening. So they go raid. Okay.
And in their search, they open the MRI.
Oh, no, no. No, 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 no. No, no, no. No, not in their search. They had already done all of their stuff. They just continued to freely wander around the hospital after they did their initial door kicker shit.
And he walked into an active. It has to be an active MRI. So there had to be somebody in the fucking tube.
One officer walked over to an MRI office where a sign hanging warned of a strong magnetic field saying, quote, metal parts and medical instruments of all types prohibited, with his rifle still dangling in his hand, according to the complaint. He looked at the sign, opened the office's door, and went inside with his weapon anyway, the complaint says. The gun flew out of the officer's hand as it was pulled by the MRI machine's magnetic force and got stuck on the equipment, according to the complaint. Instead of consulting with medical staff, another LAPD officer broke the seal of an emergency button and pressed it, deactivating the MRI machine, the complaint says. The MRI's machine magnet quickly lost superconductivity, and about 2,000 liters of helium gas evaporated, damaging the machine, according to the complaint. The officer who had the rifle retrieved his weapon, walked out of the room, and left behind a loaded magazine on the floor.
Jesus Christ, this gets better and better.
The whole operation was nothing short of a disorganized circus with no apparent rules, procedures, or even a hint of coordination, the complaint says. NoHo Diagnostic Center and the business's chief financial officer are suing the city of Los Angeles, the LAPD, several officers, and former police chief Michael Moore for violating the Fourth Amendment and negligence. The city and the police department didn't immediately respond to McClatchy News' request for comments, September 26. According to the lawsuit, the raid of NoHo Diagnostic Center stemmed from an LAPD officer's application for a search warrant. The officer said there had been a noise complaint about the medical center's air conditioning units, and cannabis was possibly being cultivated inside, the complaint says. Because the air conditioners of a medical center were running.
Yes. Which I will tell you, working in a medical center, our HVAC units are quite noisy. But that's because they're so fucking huge. You know, your household air conditioner unit, if you stand next to it, it's kind of noisy. Now take that and make it exponentially larger. Like 2 orders of magnitude larger. And now you have what is usually used for heat exchange and air conditioning in a hospital. They make noise. If you don't like the noise, you leave.
You know this gets better, right? You know this gets better. So to recap, right? Beginning of the complaint.
I have to open my other beer here because I have a feeling I'm going to need it.
We're gonna, yeah. Okay, so this is where it gets better. Okay, so to recap, right? It's a hospital. It has really big air conditioner units. Okay, which all hospitals do. They're noisy, and so this begins the suspicion of the cop, because he's super cop, and loud air conditioners can only mean one thing, right? But get this.
I'll read this one. I'll read it. I'll read it. I got it. No, you're dying. I got it. He repeatedly surveilled the property in 2023 and reported the, quote, distinct odor of live cannabis plant and not the odor of dried cannabis being smoked, as well as tinted windows, security cameras, and 2 people dressed similarly. according
At
to
a hospital? What? How suspicious.
Okay, so I want to put this into absolute context for you. Most hospitals nowadays have requirements for the colors of scrubs their employees are supposed to wear based on their job role. So in some hospitals, say a black set of scrubs means you work in imaging. A gray set of scrubs might mean you are a nurse, so on and so forth. So you're going to have people dressed similarly.
So first of all, the distinct odor of live cannabis plants. Could you describe to me that scent?
Right.
Because it's going to smell, and I realize this may shock some people, exactly like every other fucking plant.
Maybe not exactly, but it's close enough.
There is no fucking way you distinguish by just wandering in the general vicinity, right? Because he never said he saw them.
Right.
In the general vicinity of marijuana plants growing, there is no way a human being distinguishes that from tomatoes, sage, watermelons, grapes. You are not going to tell the difference.
No.
Flat out, you're not going to know the difference. I'm telling you that right fucking now. Okay, so that's number one. Okay, that's number one. But then this is a hospital. Okay, this is an active hospital. And what convinced him was it had tinted windows, security cameras, and two people dressed similarly.
So, in case anybody is geographically retarded, we're talking about the Southern California desert around Los Angeles. And we're talking about a hospital. You're going to have tinted windows at a hospital because windows, the sun going through windows generates heat. The same reason you put fucking tinted windows on your car.
But here's the thing though, and this is really the thing that gets me. So he considers this. He can see, like he looks into
probable
does the hospital
cause for
does the hospital have a license? No. So just this, right? He considers probable cause, and a judge fucking agrees with him because remember, cops don't issue these. A judge does. Judge fucking agrees with him. Basically, they did this shit. They're suing. Quote, the extensive damage to Plain's property was neither accidental nor incidental to the effective execution of the search warrant, but rather the result of an unreasonable and or recklessly indifferent LAPD officer walking into an already searched and cleared MRI room with his rifle carelessly dangling in one hand.
The lawsuit seeks an unspecified amount of damages from it and demands a jury trial.
Oh, God. Okay, so we're running out of time. I want to at least mention that George Soros has managed to get approval to buy 200 radio stations, despite the FCC's objections.
Yep.
Mr. BBEG himself.
Bad debt.
Yeah, so you have bad debt being dumped. Soros is buying radio stations. Kerry is saying we need to get rid of the First Amendment because it's getting in the way of us being able to control the way people think.
We have large number of troops heading to Alaska.
Yeah, to the Aleutian Islands. Now, don't forget that the Aleutian Islands were the only part of the United States that were invaded during World War II.
Mm-hmm.
The only actual part of the United States that were invaded during World War II, right? Like the Philippines were sort of a territory. Guam was sort of a territory.
Did you talk about the mass casualty, or is that what we're going to end on?
Oh, no, that's what we're ending on here. That's what I'm trying to build up to. So, yeah, 130 troops have been moved to an island in the Aleutian chain because a bunch of Russian and Chinese aircraft are flying awful close and violating some airspace, allegedly. It says 8 Russian military planes, 4 Navy vessels, including 2 submarines, have come close to Alaska in the past week. So they are
So in case,
currently...
and also if nobody is aware of it, the U.S. recently forward deployed 40,000 U.S. troops to Cyprus in anticipation that things in the Middle East are going to get worse.
Yeah, so we also deployed a bunch of HIMARS to the Aleutians.
What are HIMARS going to do in the Aleutians?
If they're in the far enough Aleutians, they can reach Russia.
I mean, I could understand if they had forward deployed Patriot batteries or
Well,
something like that.
Patriots are missile intercept. HIMARS are ground to ground.
Right, but that's what I mean is if they're getting a lot of Russian and Chinese planes violating the airspace of the Aleutians, it would make
Also
more
ships.
sense to put air defenders. Oh,
Yeah,
so they're
but
putting
also
Aegis
ships.
out there too?
Well, they're putting HIMARS out there, and HIMARS are capable of linking in to things like SOFLAM.
All right.
That's what they're doing.
Well, I mean, they've got to be adding into that somehow some sort of air defense system, like with say they park a guided missile destroyer out there too, and just go, oh look, a ship or a plane that's violating my airspace. Not anymore.
Oh, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff. That's only what they've revealed, but all of that, right? The dump of the debt, all of this stuff ties into the fact lawmakers planning for mass casualty event. A bipartisan group. Yeah, a bipartisan group of 4 House members is advocating for a constitutional amendment allowing for the quick replacement of Congress members in the event of a mass casualty attack. Rep. Derek Kilmer, Democrat Washington, with Reps. Brad Wenstrup, Republican Ohio, William Timmons, Republican South Carolina, and Emmanuel Cleaver II, Democrat Missouri, put forth a proposal to ensure that Congress can continue to work if a large number of members are killed in a mass attack. This proposal aims to ensure continuous representation and prevent violence from shifting political power. Quote, we've seen a 300% increase in threats against members over the last 7 years, end quote, noted Derek Kilmer.
Maybe because you're fucking stirring the pot and kicking the fucking hornet's nest constantly.
Yeah, the amendment would require House members to provide a list of potential replacements to their state's governor. Filling vacancies quickly would help maintain stability and deter political violence. However, passing such an amendment is challenging, obviously, due to the need for a 2/3 congressional vote and state ratification. Richard Primus, constitutional law professor at the University of Michigan, suggested lawmakers should also consider changing the Presidential Succession Act, which currently blah blah blah.
Long story short, what they're trying to do is they want to pass an amendment that requires you, if you get elected to Congress, to provide a list of potential replacements for you in the event that something happens and you are killed while in office, even if it's whether it's mass casualty or not.
And allows for the governor to simply appoint those replacements. Right. So what they're doing is that they are now suddenly planning for mass casualty as all of these other things are happening. They're suddenly going, well, if a whole bunch of us get killed, we need to make sure that we can keep government running. You notice?
Well, to be fair, it's not entirely a new thing. 40 potential constitutional amendments on the subject of continuity have been introduced since 1945, and none of them have passed.
Yeah, and I mean, it may not pass, but the fact that they're even trying in relation to all of these other things, I think says a lot, right? Like, I think that's a very...
Well, yeah, especially when I don't know, did you cover the 80% of adults?
Yes, article? I did.
So when you could look back on that and you say 80% of adults in the United States believe the nation is greatly divided. And now they're proposing another one of these amendments trying to basically push through a continuity of governance, anticipating that probably some sketchy shit's going to happen. Not to mention the United States constantly poking at China and poking at Russia and, you know, all of that fun stuff happening over there in the Far East, the Middle East, and the Northeast, for lack of better terminology.
Well, that's great. It starts with an earthquake, birds, snakes, an airplane. But you know, Lenny Bruce is not afraid.
Are you kidding me? This all started with a dead gorilla.
I have a hurricane. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I know. I got it.
This
all started with a fucking dead gorilla.
It did, but I do want to cover really, really quickly, just because this shit just blows my fucking mind. California County fines man 120 grand for refusing to evict a family from his property.
Pardon me. $120,000 for not evicting somebody from his property.
Yeah, hundreds of people live in trailers and campers on the streets of Santa Clara County, California, a very visible sign of the ultra-expensive county's homelessness crisis. Despite the scale of vehicular homelessness in the county officials have spent years focusing their enforcement actions on a single trailer parked on private property. For years now, winery owner Michael Ballard has allowed his longtime vineyard manager, Marcelino Martinez, again, this man works for him at that location,
Yes.
and his family to live rent-free in a trailer parked on the winery's property. County officials say this violates a county ordinance prohibiting recreational vehicles parked on residential parcels from being used as dwelling units. Therefore, Martinez's trailer has got to go. Ballard has been trying to fix the violation by building a permanent home for Martinez and his family in the property, but getting all the needed permits from the county for that home has taken years, which is why people live in fucking trailers. Anyway,
it's also interim, it might have something to do with why people build armored bulldozers, but you know,
right? In the interim, Ballard has refused to evict Martinez's family from his property. I'm not going to remove this trailer because that will cause them to be homeless, and I'd be putting this family on the street, and I'm not going to do that. In response, the county has issued Ballard daily fines for every day he refuses to remove the trailer. These fines so far total $120,000. Ballard is now suing the county in federal court, arguing the fines violate the U.S. Constitution's prohibition on excessive fines. We don't really have time to go into this article too much, but this boggles my fucking mind. This is this man's fucking property. These people are just fine. They're living there just fine, right? This is California. This isn't Alaska. They're not going to freeze to death.
No.
They're doing
even if it
fine.
was Alaska. No, hold up. Even if it was Alaska, look, we live in the great white, frozen tundra of Wisconsin, right? There are municipalities here in Wisconsin who say if you park a camper on your property and it sits in the same spot for more than 6 months out of the year, your property taxes increase by 25% automatically because now you have a dwelling or a permanent fixture on your property.
Yeah, Wisconsin recognizes these fucking things as permanent dwelling places. Although, weirdly, we don't allow tiny houses. So, that's fucking weird. But
we don't, but there's a loophole to that. If the structures are connected in any way, size, shape, or form, it's not considered a tiny house. So if you put, say, a circle of tiny houses around a central location and then put a piece of wood between them, they are interconnected buildings and not considered their individual structures.
Right, but that's what I'm saying, that like we will allow an RV, but not a fucking tiny house, unless that tiny house is on wheels, and therefore you call it an RV.
Right.
Fucking stupid. Oh,
if anything the government did made sense, people like us wouldn't exist, Andrew.
Well, that's true. It's true. But anyway, so like that's the insanity, right? That is the insanity of your property rights. California is actively trying, the state of California is actively trying to make people who are hardworking individuals working for this man at his vineyard homeless because they don't like that he's living in an RV, and the man who owns the property is facing $120,000 in fines for refusing to make these people homeless, while
And growing.
simultaneously making his ability to simply build them a permanent house that is within their rules the hardest it can possibly be. Welcome to fucking California, soon to visit the entire rest of the country. Let's be honest. This is a shit that's coming to everywhere. And you know it is people increasingly are unable to afford anywhere to live. You know that they're going to crack down on this ever harder, and this shit's going to get even worse.
Yep. The intention is literally to meet the Agenda 2030. You will own nothing and you'll be happy about it.
It is fucking disgusting. I hate these people. But anyway, all right. Well, we have a minute and a half. Plugs. Go for it.
Coffee. Follow the links in the link tree. Go find some coffee. Enjoy it.
Yes,
Andrew,
we are sponsored by Dave over at Poppins Patches. Check him out. Fantastic quality patches. Absolutely awesome. He is a great friend of the show. He's a sponsor of the show. He makes some fantastic patches. Right now, Chris is showing off one of the tactical bluey patches. We have all kinds of cool patches that he does. They're super awesome. You definitely want some. Check him out at poppinspatches.com. He's got a really cool alligator one right now as well that you should definitely check out. It's super, super fucking great. Also, we're sponsored by Reaper Brand Apparel. Super cool brand, super cool message. Check them out. Use the code. Use the link, though, in our link tree, and you get more off than if you use the code.
30 seconds.
Thebeardstruggle.com. Use code InkAnarchist15. You get 15% off. Again, in the link tree. Lions, not sheep. Use the code in the link tree. You support us when you go buy stuff. It's super awesome. You want to do it. RK Spookware also sponsors us. Code, link tree. Same deal. Check them out. If you know who they are, you know why you need them, and you know why you should check them out. I don't remember who else sponsors us. Check out Derica's book, whatever. It's all in our link tree. We're almost out of time. Thank you so much for listening or watching, however you are enjoying this. You guys have a great night. We will see you as soon as we can get stuff coordinated again. It might be a month. I hope not, but we will see. Peace, y'all.
Later.